take Sir Abed's comment a moment ago further, that universities, even though learning systems will change over the next 50 years, but it's likely that universities will endure. And they, in many ways, are the backbone of a learning society. But one of the paradoxes of living in Carol's borderless, global, generalist world is while we learn, we also need to question what we learn. And so it's that balance. I know, Georges, you like to write about rationality and creativity. How do we educate a society, Georges, to think and to question the fundamentals of what we learn?
This is the most fundamental question. This is the most fundamental question. And as a mathematical teacher, I've always thought that my goal and my objective teaching to children and to students is to give them what I call the two fundamental aspects of approach to knowledge based on desire and doubt as driving forces for creativity and rationality. I don't try to impose them knowledge as something which is done for life, etc. But I want to create and to develop in their mind this capacity to be critical, to be rational, to be creative, to be innovative. And that's the role of education. Education is not to impose a knowledge as done for life, etc., because knowledge evolves. It's a dynamic process. What we considered as granted 20 years ago is completely transformed today. So I think that we have to be modest, humble, and ambitious in this aspect of delivering knowledge. You mentioned technology. Of course, Jeffrey Sachs mentioned technology, but Sheikh Hamoza said something which is more important. Why? Because technology now, and tomorrow surely, will make all knowledge and basic knowledge available to everyone, everywhere. But the question is, what should we learn? What should we retain? How do we develop our critical ability not to take all this knowledge as granted, but we have to have, this citizen dimension, to have a critical aspect. This is why we need teachers, we need schools, but we need also to make education a dynamic process through life. And this is why also it's important to create this rational vision of education and to create and to develop this doubt with desire to learn, but doubt also not to receive everything as granted for life. And just to finish about university, you mentioned university. I would like to speak on my university, not to promote Sorbonne University, but because Sorbonne University send a message few people know. And if you ask even French professors at university, why Sorbonne is called Sorbonne? Sorbonne was founded centuries ago, during the Middle Ages, by a scholar called Robert de Sorbonne. Robert de Sorbonne, who founded the first Royal College of Paris, supported by King St. Louis. Okay. Centuries later, this college, Royal College, became a university, as Bologna, as Oxford, etc. And the student and professor of this time said, how could we nickname this university to represent its essence and its substance? And they were trying to find something with Sorbonne. They had difficulties to find, but a Latin scholar said, oh, remember, Sorbona in Latin means good luck, good opportunity. So they decided to call Sorbonne, Sorbona, this university, because it's a good opportunity and a good luck. We should never forget that universities, our schools, should represent this good luck for everyone who can attend a good school, a good university, a good high school. So Sorbona, this is the wishes we make for all our students.
And actually, that's a wonderful segue to ask the next question. To make it relevant and relevant to society, how can we rethink and reimagine education, reimagine the classroom, so that we bring in the sectors, whether it is education, whether it is women's issues, whether it is healthcare? How do we bring the economy, how do we bring that into the classroom? Carol, would you like to comment on that?
Well, maybe we have to take education out of the classroom also, and at the same time, maybe bring the community into the classroom. I probably shouldn't say this in this group, but I also think we have to take education away from the educrats, if I may, or not entirely in the control of the educrats. Let me put it that way. I think education leadership is an area that demands much more attention. I don't think we talk about training, but I don't know that we've talked as much about leadership. And I think leadership, all kinds of leadership in education, is an area that needs more attention. So to me, education should be more of a community endeavor. And if it's a community endeavor, then the ownership of education is a broader ownership. It's the ownership of well, certainly it's the ownership of the parents. It's the ownership of the community of commerce, as the case may be. It's the ownership of improving the well-being of human beings. So there needs to be some core elements, clearly, in education. You know, we need to be able to read and to speak and to write and do math. But I just think that it just sees education more broadly. And I think if we engage and realize that educators are more than only those who've been trained to provide education, then perhaps we can define a more community-anchored education. And to me, that's where we should be heading. I wanted to say, I wasn't suggesting we didn't need specialists. I think we need specialists. But the specialist engineer of 2011 may be different than the specialist engineer of 2019. I wasn't suggesting that everybody just walks around going anything goes, but the ability to see transformation in the skills within a specialty is, I suppose, what I meant a little bit more about generalists, that there needs to be more flexibility. We're not going to be doing the same thing today. We're not doing the same thing today that we did 20 years ago, frankly, and people don't stay at the same thing, and that's what I meant a little bit more about that. So again, to me, I think we make education more relevant by becoming less standardized and becoming more community-focused.
Excellent. Now, this panel is also fundamentally about how we engage all sectors in the field of education, to pick up further on Carol's point that education is something which has to be owned by the society, owned by the community. And Georges made a comment a moment ago that technology is a tool. Is it truly a tool for collaboration across sectors?
Yeah, it's a tool, but we have to be careful about this tool. And I am finishing to write a paper I spoke to you in Paris 2 weeks ago about the fragility of power. We have to realize now that our young children, and I realize it day after day through my children, using technology are very dependent on technology. And when the computer fails, they are completely lost. They are completely lost. The fragility of power. Remember this novel by Isaac Asimov, where you have astronauts going in the sky for a mission, using tools perfectly, computers, etc., and then to return to Earth, the computer fails. So they don't know how to calculate the trajectory back Earth. And what do they do in the novel? They rediscover science, Newton's laws, infinitesimal calculus, integral calculus. So I think this is the challenge of education today, is learning to learn, learning to unlearn, and learning to keep your mind available to make the necessary efforts at all levels of professions, of citizenship, learning to learn, learning to unlearn, and learning to be critical and to be rediscovering, to have this capacity not to be passive. And technology gives us power, but it gives us a strong fragility. We have to address that, which is so important. And another aspect is that we think that knowledge is available, and it's an illusion. What do we know? What do we retain from school? If I ask you, what do you know about quantum physics? You learn maybe 1 or 2 hours at school, or bioethics, or biochemistry, or genetic manipulation. And people think that they know. Why? Because they think that making this knowledge available on internet, etc., gives this power and this capacity to think that knowledge is acquired. We are in a strong illusion of knowledge, which is far deeper than it was 15 years or centuries ago. Because what we think we know is very infinitesimal to the reality of knowledge.
I make a very strong case as well for the balance between generalists and specialists. Well said. Just before we open up to the audience, I want to pose one more question, and this to take the look at the role of education in a slightly different manner, but in a way which I know at least two of our panelists, if not all of you, are passionate about, and that is the issue of gender. In so many ways, we know when we tackle gender, particularly education of women and young girls, we are immediately working in a multidisciplinary way. We are already addressing not only the status of women and legal issues, we're addressing health, we're addressing economics of the household, economics of the community. We are addressing a multitude of issues. How do you look at gender? And perhaps Sir Abid might like to comment on that and the role of how that brings sectors together. And then perhaps Carol and George.
Well, I consider education for girls the most important investment that one could ever make in any society. So that's because it has got multiple outcomes. It's not only just our own understanding of society or our own education, our own rationality, our own creativity going to be affected by education, but it is also affecting our entire families' understanding and creativity also. So the society values education, that it's the mother who should be first educated before anybody else. Then we have seen fantastic changes in children's lives when mothers are educated. One has even gone on calculating the life expectancy at birth of women with 5 years of education, 7 years of education, 9 years of education, and so on. So we can tell you there's fantastic benefits that comes out of women's education in every society. It's not just developing country, but in developed country also. Yes.
Carol?
Yeah, well, I totally agree. If I could do only one thing, it would be to focus on assuring that all girls and therefore all boys are getting a good quality education. And because the returns on investment are just so incredible. But it's becoming a more nuanced issue, it seems to me. And some significant differences between what I would call the industrialized world and the developing world. In the developing world, the gap in terms of girls and boys having access at least to primary school, we still, the issue of quality of education in primary school is still very much at issue. But the access of girls and boys in primary school has definitely been closing. There is still a gap, but it's closed dramatically. But that is not so in secondary school. I mean, the continuation in secondary school, and we know that these benefits, which you get even from the 5 years, are significant, but they dramatically increase in secondary school. But the other is that this disparity in terms of industrialized and developing, I mean, girls are doing better than boys in most of the industrialized world. That pattern is not showing up even where there's parity in developing countries, and I think I think there's more research that needs to be done there. In large part, it's because while girls are now going to school and they're still doing all the tasks they used to do before. So they're going to school, but they're still going to collect the water. They're still taking care of their siblings. They're still doing other things. So they have less time to do homework. They have less time to do other things. They're more tired. And so it's very interesting that the access gap is closing, but the equity in terms of boys and girls in poorer countries, in terms of their ability to take advantage of education, hasn't closed that much. There's certainly more attention to it, and we can't forget boys. The fact is, certainly in the more industrialized world, the challenge for education of boys and the dropout of boys and those issues are critically important. And even the attitude of boys in developing countries in terms of girls' education are critical. But I think it's become less a access issue and a more nuanced, able to take advantage of education and move it forward. And yet again, just to conclude, having spent 7 years as an investment banker, the best investment advice I've ever been able to give is to invest in girls going to school.
Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you to a terrific panel.